agnostic. And then the reason for not citing both was because we want both data formats to be able to update and develop independently of the ASPAM minimum elements. And if we include references that date this document to specific versions, it might be more confusing it down the road. And so citing specific things, references to the data formats might be more appropriate in an example document that is updated more frequently, letting this ASPAM minimum elements sort of live for as long as possible without needing to be changed to be updated to specific references to a data format. Uh, you'll see some structural changes to the document, and that is because we sent this document to our production team at the same time that you all were looking at it, and they have some updates to their template. This won't change the content of the document itself, but the executive summary will look different. And because of our updates to the executive summary, we've introduced a new section in the introduction that will just summarize all of the notable changes. So what was previously in the executive summary of saying, here are the new data fields, here are the data field, or the elements with minimum changes, here are the elements with major changes, that's now just a section of the introduction itself. Are there any questions about anything I've covered or any changes that specific changes you were hoping to see in this updated draft?
Maybe Victoria, just to first to thank you for the openness and for trying to take on board all our comments. I think you, from our side, obviously we as DG Connect, we help to coordinate the input of some of the member states that are also in this call. So of course, guys, please feel free to react to anything. I think we were quite happy with the document, and we are happy to see that some of our suggestions, from what you're saying, it seems that you also took them up. So that sounds great. Maybe there was, I don't know if you mentioned it and I missed it, there was one request to record the component sort of provenance, so the build location of the software component. Is that something that you're taking up? Or if not, why?
So we decided it. We were concerned that introducing the component provenance element, sorry, I'm just looking for where I put it in this document, that it would be misinterpreted as requesting or requiring ASPAM authors to record the geographic location of where the ASPAM was produced. And we know that a lot of stakeholders, including our interagency colleagues, would be very interested in having this data field because it's an easy way to fulfill any requirements that they get in terms of this product cannot be manufactured in XYZ locations or must be manufactured in this location. But we're concerned that implementation would be confusing because it would get into, is it where the developer is or is it where the company is headquartered? And also then how is that implementable for open source software where anonymity is important to the communities and geographic location isn't always known?
I think that the other part of our reasoning is that it's part of the software development process and not part of the software. And so in general, SBOMs are about the software. And if folks want attestations about the software development process within their jurisdiction, like obviously that is perfectly fine. But we're trying to treat attestation as a separable set of items from properties of the software. And since folks are just going to have different attestation requirements in different jurisdictions, we don't want to like gum this up too much with that. I think that was the other part of our desire to keep this minimum, right? Because just because it's minimum doesn't mean someone can't add additional expectations when they're asking for things. Obviously, all of the existing standards have more stuff than this generally. So.
Tommaso, do you want to respond before we go to Nicola?
I think maybe Nicola first, and then if needed, I can respond.
Yes, thank you, Tommaso. Yes, this because this is one of the proposals that we had made. Hi, everyone. So yeah, what we had in mind was the build location. So as you said, because we didn't want to get into kind of like complicated company structures and organizations, then we thought that probably this information could be captured somehow in some metadata, or SCA tools to be able to put in an SBOM. So really the build location of the final software package or the final software package of the component.
So are you expecting the geographic location of the cloud data center that whoever it is SSH is into to compile their software?
I mean, perhaps more like traditional like software package. So you say like, okay, the actual build is happening in machines, which, yeah, I mean, for software, if you say if it happens on the cloud, yes, there would be the data center, yes.
So then what information we get from this if people just decide that they're going to decide to build their software in whatever place is convenient and just change it all the time? Because you can just move the compiler process around. Like there are computers in every country. So I can make that value literally whatever I want. Like what's the value?
Well, to know where it's kind of like final assembly, right? Like final testing, assembly, that kind of information, right? I mean, like, because yeah, it's hard to say where provenance. It's hard to define pinpoint provenance. So if we had to pick on something, we said, okay, yeah, that's the final packaging of the component. Where does that physically happen, right? Again, it's a suggestion because it's complicated to define provenance, and so we thought that perhaps the smoothest or the cleanest way to go around it was to identify the software final build location. Let's say with a hardware comparison, that could be the testing and assembly, backend testing and assembly, trying to find an equivalent with hardware. But yeah, understand that it's a touchy subject, so we just tried to propose a concrete kind of interpretation or approach.
Yeah, so we weren't able to understand how to implement that in a way where it wasn't trivial to just manipulate it, given that there are data centers everywhere and you can just run a compiler in whatever computer you're renting and make that geographic location sort of whatever you want. And also there's no way to that still seems like an attestation about the development process then, right? Because you want someone to promise this, I think. And
not necessarily, just to know. I mean, like as you said, like we don't need like any kind of I mean, of course, then SBOMs can be used in many different ways, but just to capture that information. Yes, it's not a binding, as you said. It doesn't mean that it has to be in any way binding, but it's just, as you said, like information.
I'm curious if other folks have thoughts on this being more actionable than I'm understanding. I don't want to just say my same thing again.
I will also say this is a similar problem to what we ran into with other SBOM elements that we were considering including in this, which is even if we see we can see a clear security need for some data, but if there isn't sort of a widely understood meaning of the element and the implementation, then we had to determine that it wasn't mature enough to include in this batch of the minimum elements. But it's possible that in the next iteration, during whatever time has passed, that everyone comes to an agreement on generally what build location would mean, or how it would be automatable.
Sure. No, I understand. It's just reflecting what a thought process that we had in our agency. But thanks for considering that.
Okay, and I think I saw another hand earlier. Tomo-san.
Thank you very much. That's a question. I may have missed it, but has the updated document been shared with the group, or?
We have not shared out the current draft, the current working
Oh,
draft
okay.
that incorporates all of your feedback. We have it, but we are waiting for
Okay.
the okay to actually send it out to all of you.
Yeah. Okay.
I
Thank you
am
very
fingers
much.
crossing. It shouldn't be more than a couple more days for our leadership to review and just give us the all clear to share it back out with all of you.
I see. Thank you very much. And if that's the case, I had a question regarding as far as generation context.
Yes.
Yeah, you were explaining about before build, when build, after build, stuff like that. Could you clarify on that? Like, were you saying that you were using those? You are now using those as an example, and the generation context can be described in other ways, such as SBOM types or things like that. That's the situation. Okay. Thank you very
Yes,
much.
so the SBOM sort of generation context, I'll call them identifiers. So this is SBOM types in SPDX, and I'm sorry to CycloneDX users, I cannot remember what it's called in the CycloneDX context. It has a completely different name, but both of them are capable of doing what this element asks for, and they both get much more specific than what's needed. And so from our perspective, that means great, this element is immediately implementable and automatable.
I see.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
And before we move on, I want to go over another one. The one other suggestion for an additional element that we didn't include as its standalone element. This was SBOM identifier. And so this was a suggestion for, of course I cannot find it right now, but an identifier for the SBOM document itself. What we did is, instead of having it as a standalone element in addition to the SBOM version element, is we incorporated it into the, because the recommendation was to use an identifier like a serial number. And so what we did is incorporated that into the SBOM version element as a path that an SBOM author could take to satisfy the SBOM version element, because a unique identifier for an SBOM, like a serial number, allows someone receiving the SBOM to track version changes across SBOM documents for the version of a given component. So now the version element it discusses semantic versioning as one example that can be used, and then unique identifiers following the recommended ISO, I think it's RFC, I think the recommendation was for 4112, which has since been updated by RFC 9562. So that reference is included in the SBOM version element. And if anyone has any questions about that one.
Yep. Thank you. Yes, this was another suggestion that came from us. So thanks for accommodating that.
Okay. Do you have any questions about how we integrated that?
It sounds reasonable. So yes,
Okay.
I mean, I think yes.
Good. I think those were the only 2 additional element recommendations we received. There were other recommendations for adding 2 existing elements, which rather than sort of rattle it off here where you guys cannot see the document, I'm the only one who has the benefit of seeing the new text. I will let you all review on your own time, and there will be an opportunity for you guys to tell us that was terrible, not at all what we wanted, and send us a note back. So it's not the absolute last time for your voices to be heard on all of this. Unless there's any more questions to follow up on something feedback that you all submitted, I'll put up the text to the coverage element, and then we can all discuss that one. I think that was also the element that we had the most feedback on.
Victoria, while you're grabbing that, I'll give the context that the other parts of the document now better emphasize that the component and SBOM data fields are the data fields, and the practices and processes are how those data fields get filled out. So it's possible that there was some confusion that the practice and process minimum elements should be entered into an SBOM as data fields with values. And so in addition to updating the text for coverage, we've clarified sort of the whole document that practices and processes are about how the minimum elements get filled out by the SBOM author, but they're not elements that we're expecting to see themselves. So for folks that might be confused previously as to how they filled out a coverage minimum element, we've also tried to clarify that that's like not going to be an expectation. It's about how the other minimum elements get filled out.
Okay, so you guys, if I'm doing this correctly, should all see the text of the coverage element as you all saw it in the draft that you just reviewed, or that you reviewed earlier in January and gave us feedback on. Yeah, I'll stop there. If anyone would like to share any feedback, I know we discussed this. I think we discussed this a lot at our previous meeting, and then got a lot more comments on it. So I think it'd be productive to have sort of like a back and forth conversation live, so that we all feel good about the state that we leave this element in. Miguel?
Yeah, so the first question for me is, how is the should supposed to be used? And under what context? What does should really mean?
So we use should as a lot of you have noticed, throughout the document. And that is for the purpose of establishing a requirement in terms of what the SBOM document should look like, about what we expect the document to look like when an organization receives it, and how we expect that data to be filled out. From our perspective, or we are limited, our agency is limited in terms of using more strict words like must and shall. The guidance we've received from our legal team is that that language has to be reserved for something more binding.
Basically stuff Congress tells us to do.
Yeah. And so it would be up to a regulatory agency for the US context, or each of you in your jurisdictions to implement this in a more strict way.
Okay, so in a sense, it's not a normative reference or normative usage. It's what you expect, but it doesn't mandate the user to, like in the ISO context, I can do it or I don't do it, like the recommendation, or in the RFC usage, where when I have a should, If I don't implement it, then I have to justify why I don't do it. So it's like a shell with the option, if I can justify, I can get out. So it's not those kinds of normative contexts. It's just, this is how you like to see it.
Yes, and I think this gives a lot more agency to individual organizations that are implementing SBOM, receiving SBOMs. If they receive an SBOM whose version element, for example, doesn't follow semantic versioning or the standard for serial numbers, they can go back to the organization that gave them the SBOM and say, you actually didn't meet the SBOM minimum elements in this, like, for this one. Can you either explain why, or I'm going to reject? Like, they have the option to say, I want more information, or I am going to reject this and say this doesn't meet my expectations. And this also actually gives us a little more leeway in terms of the resources we can point people to, so we can cite multiple standards that all satisfy an element without requiring an individual one, which is helpful for this international context where we can cite a NIST standard and also an ISO standard. If you guys all want to cite another one, that's all doable. And I think we added language like any standards required by relevant authorities.
I know that it's a little bit annoying that we have to use should in a slightly non-standard way. We don't have anything that defines the normative words references on purpose, which is also annoying. Like, I would like to be able to do that, but we keep getting told that we're not allowed to. So we have to handle things with these sort of like verbal understandings amongst the people on the call, which I apologize for.
Tomo-san, we landed on producer. The changes you'll see to that element is we carried the producer change all throughout, and added an extra footnote explicitly calling out the use of manufacturer in the EU's Cyber Resilience Act, to hopefully clear up that confusion and clarify that the definition of component producer in this document includes entities identified as manufacturers under the CRA.
Thank you very much. Can I say something about coverage as well?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much. So what Michael was describing, we have been hearing similar comments from Jack Staples as well. Like, what is shared? Like, how much do we really have? It's the question that I think there is. It may cause some confusions, but I get where you're coming from. So it's a hard problem to solve. So I can't really think of a way to describe, whether if it's should or must and shall and things like that. But yeah, I've been hearing that such comments may cause confusion. That's one comment. And regarding the coverage element, like for example, Japan has provided this feedback, but words such as all components, completeness, or depth, or detail of SBOM often used to refer different scopes by different stakeholders. So, when like all components within been put out by tool, or that includes all the libraries and stuff like that. So that part needs to be clarified now. That's the feedback that we sent. So sharing it here.
John, you look like you want to respond. Do you want to take this one, or I can go ahead? Okay. Yes. This element walks a very thin, kind of weird line in that we need to set the expectation for what data we expect to see in an SBOM, sort of in terms of scope, but also acknowledge that each organization or the expectations for depth to an organization for coverage for what all components means can be different for different stakeholders. And there also is no super clear boundary for software components. And so how we defined it is if there is a vulnerability that affects the security of the component, like the target component, the component that you're worried about, that's why you requested the SBOM. If there's a vulnerability that affects the security of that component, that dependency should be listed in the SBOM. If it is, you've met the requirement, the expectation for coverage. If it is not listed, you have not met the requirement for coverage. It is possible, and we sort of expect this, that organizations may set their own expectation for coverage more concretely, or that agencies or other authorities may set more clear expectations, for example, for critical infrastructure, or FDA for medical devices. And so we wanted to leave that room available while setting the expectation that this should be coming out from a security perspective. And what we're concerned about is making sure that each organization that receives an SBOM has all of the available information that they need to make sure that they aren't impacted by new security information like a vulnerability.
Enough components, nothing.
It is also a little hard because we definitely want to go beyond top level dependencies, but I have looked, I cannot find a good sort of next step for what is next after only top level dependencies that is sort of satisfactory to most, if not all, use cases. To go.
My concern or kind of problem, I know where you're coming from, but looking at from a regulatory side, the way it's described now, you can do whatever you want. And what we kind of expect is there is no minimum depth, so we're going for the full SBOM. But then again, we can't say that you need to give us the full SBOM. And between that, there's no steps. So we are kind of back again, do whatever you want from the way I read it, which is kind of hard for us to follow, because the feedback we always get is everything is not possible. Also coming to the point that the understanding what a component is very different for a lot of the manufacturers and for us. So in our technical guideline, we define the component as either the executable file or an archive containing different executable files. So we can go to the level of an RPM package, but still we want the information on the actual file. The sweet spot would probably be that it's on the level that you can map it against vulnerability databases and get the information that something in your product has a vulnerability. Again, there's, as far as I know, no other real definition of a component in that regards. So that makes it hard, and moving the expectation to the ones expecting the SBOM has the problem that I can say I found or I have a vulnerability and I couldn't find it because you didn't state it in the SBOM. That can always happen. And I, as a manufacturer, you might not know to what level you have to go to meet that expectation. So you probably end up again at the full SBOM, which might not be possible because you don't get all the information to put that into your SBOM. So for us, it's kind of hard because it doesn't describe a way or a reasonable way where to go with the information you need to provide. Again, that's hard if you don't have should or shalls. And I totally understand where you're coming from. And if it's really hard if you can't use those kind of normative language.
Thank you. Well, I think I have a response. Tommaso?
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to say basically something similar to what Michael said, in the sense that we've also been talking about it with Michael, and yeah, also my impression, but more I wanted more to hear your view on this, but also my impression is that this sort of tension between being able to needing to include everything, but clearly being able to say, oh, I actually don't know this, so I can just state that I don't know it, is a little bit leaving it very much up to the SBOM producer to do a bit whatever they want. So I was wondering if indeed you'd considered stronger language on, okay, this is at least the minimum that you need to do, and that's the very minimum that we will always expect. And that could be, for example, your everything that you develop internally and your first external layer, or, you know, we could discuss what the adequate minimum should be. And then all the rest, you should aim for that, but it's not, or, I mean, it's optional, or you should still do it, but you have the possibility to identify known unknowns. So try and find, let's say, a bit more balanced middle ground, whereby there is a bare minimum that is always, or not even a bare minimum, but just a strong minimum that is always necessary. Again, it's more to hear your thoughts, because I fully understand that without being able to use normative language, that's also very, very tricky to do. So it was just more to see what you think about it and how you've been approaching this.
So I don't know why I just thought of this now. If this just read an SBOM includes information, so take out the should. And then halfway down, SBOMs provide a comprehensive listing of the components. Right, so just take out all the normative words. At least for this one. I don't know if we can do that throughout. But yeah, as an example here. Like, how much does that help? I think that one's fine.
I think it definitely makes at least the impact stronger, but still, you're saying, you know, I think it needs to be read in conjunction with the identifying what you don't know, right? And if, as long as you can identify what you don't know for everything, then it's still down to who makes up. Maybe I'm missing something, but it's still down to who makes up, or who makes the SBOM to say, actually, this I don't know, and to sort of not even having go to look. I can just say I don't know.
So Tommaso, I think there's two things, right? So the last two sentences that say like linking to another SBOM can satisfy this. Or so if you want to satisfy your like first external jump out, you should link to that SBOM. And then you've transferred as a organization or a company, I would imagine that you would justifiably be able to say that you've transferred the responsibility for providing the SBOM to whatever your dependency was that you just linked out to. And like if that other organization doesn't have one, then the person who's yelling at you should go yell at them instead of you. They could put in their contract that you have to go get all of those, but then you've signed the contract and that's on you. Right, so like we are not going to intervene on people's contractual negotiations on what someone buying software is going to demand of their suppliers. Right, and if that supplier signs a contract that says they're going to get all the SBOMs, that's where that should be handled, right? That should be contract language that's negotiated. And that's not something that this document is going to talk about. But this gives a way to satisfy the letter of it through various different means. And we also have updated the what was previously called known unknowns, which is like an American political reference to 2002, to explicitly identifying unknown information, just to make it a little bit more clear. That the other thing that you're saying, and I think this is another thing where like somehow either the, you know, market surveillance authority in your case, or the contractor or the contract supplier or whatever, right? There's going to be a negotiation on what counts as what you're allowed to say you don't know. And we need to leave space for that negotiation because it's got to apply to everyone, but we can't make a decision for 7 billion people as to what the right answer to exactly the right level for that is right here.
Thanks. I mean, I also don't have obviously a perfect solution at all. And indeed, I think I agree with Tomo. It's very difficult to define things clearly and at the same time leave the right flexibility. So yeah.
I don't know. I'm torn, and I think I'm torn because of everything that you've both just said. And I think that is probably a sign that this element will change again in the next iteration of the ASPA minimum elements. Because it sounds like we're almost there where we can expect more from all SBOM author software producers, and then give more strict or more specific expectations for coverage. But the fact that even we are all not quite in agreement yet on what this means is a signal to me that we would be moving further than where the ecosystem is right now if we add more specification.
Can I ask indeed, sorry, Michael, if I don't respect the order of the ends, but indeed, what is the kind of feedback that you're getting from industry and organizations? Because indeed, I think Michael earlier mentioned they all say everything cannot be done, like the full depth cannot be done. But is there some minimum that there seems to be a consensus that it can be done?
Honestly, the feedback I get in person and also from the public comments was, whoa, moving beyond top level dependencies is crazy. No one can do more than top level. So even this, which seems like a very small step, I think will get a lot of negative feedback from stakeholders who think even the top level dependencies only was a big ask.
At the same time, there are several companies marketing products that will sell you a full dependency SBOM that they rip apart from the compiled binary as a third-party solution. So if someone as a third party can offer that for sale and is selling it, then I have some limited sympathy for the people who say it's not possible for them to do it while they're writing the software themselves. Although I have not independently analyzed the entire veracity of those products for sale. There are more than one. So I feel like they can't be all totally smoke and mirrors.
Sorry, Michael, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, one thing, and Tommaso made a comment about that in the same direction. One thing we are thinking about it right now internally is that the SBOM, what the manufacturer can do, and again, for us, the SBOM is most useful if it's created during the build process of a software product. So what, in our view, a manufacturer can do is list all the components he created himself. So all the internal stuff, because that's what he knows. He can list the external third-party components without the need to go further. So we could still say it's good if you know more, but if you don't get the SBOM from your supplier, then you can't give that information. But you still know what product you integrated as a component. So you still can list that one. And if that manufacturer has his own SBOM, you can still link it and satisfy that. And what a manufacturer also can do, in my opinion, a lot of them don't want to, but what they can do, if they integrate free and open source components into their product, because all that stuff is free and open source and they can get the source code. So in my opinion, that's also information manufacturers have and they can put into their SBOM. And for us, we are looking if that's a reasonable way, because all of that information he can get. If he has contracts where he demands from his supplier to get more information, he can put it in, but again, might not be possible to get that information. And then we are way beyond the top level. And if we get that information, I think we would help the ecosystem quite a lot. So just to let you know where we are discussing or what we are discussing right now.
Michael, that sounds all very reasonable and looks to me like would largely be covered by the last sentence there about linking to other documents. Like, I think that what you said, although in less detail, I think it's included in what we have here. Is that not how you're reading that?
Yeah, the linking to other documents means that the third-party components you integrate have other documents. So coming back again to the point, what information can the manufacturer or the software product producer get? That might not be the information of the third-party component or what's in the third-party component, but he can list the third-party component itself in his SBOM. So for me, he doesn't even need to link to the third-party SBOM. He just needs to state it as one component in his product. So your last sentence is a part of it, but again, if a manufacturer doesn't have an SBOM, then you as a producer might not be able to satisfy that requirement or that part.
Yeah, I guess that's a good link. Is obviously going to have the context meaning of hyperlink, but I think that there aren't hyperlinks to other SBOM documents as a field, right? The way to link to other documents is the name in the dependency field of the component name and version, which you should be able to look up what the SBOM is. But
if they don't have an SBOM, you can't use the link.
Yeah,
that's what I mean.
Well, and in this, I guess if we're going to continue the metaphor to hyperlinks, if you've provided a link, but the person hosting that web page doesn't have a page there, that's no longer your fault. You've like provided the correct link. Like they don't have a page. It's not saying that it's a valid link, right? Maybe that word link needs to be better defined to mean that you've named all of them in the dependencies and you could go find them if they exist. Because even in the URL metaphor, like link doesn't necessarily mean that it's a valid link. It just means you've provided the pointer.
Yeah,
but that's not clear in this sentence.
But for us, the third-party component or the requirement would already be satisfied if the third-party component is described with all the data fields describing the component without you having to put in a link or a dead link to the actual manufacturer of the third-party component. So you would just still get all the information or use all the information on the third-party component and put that into your SBOM. without linking it. If you have the link to the SBOM, then that's fine, and you should put it in. But if you don't have a link to a third-party SBOM because it might not even exist, then you don't have to provide the link, but you still have to provide all the component data.
Where all the component data is the name and version. Otherwise you're just providing it, right? So the example in the last sentence of a link is only when you don't already have it included in the, like, internalized into your SBOM.
Yes, but you would still get the information of the hash value, hash algorithm, license, relationship. So you would satisfy all the component data fields without using the link because you might not have a link. So it's just one component you put in.
I think we're saying the same thing, which is why I think
Okay.
why I think that word is badly used, and I'll try to think about either a definition for it or a better word.
I think you are saying the same thing, and I think a footnote would be best to explain what we mean by linking. I think it'll take a lot of words to be like to say point to in such a way that someone can access, et cetera, et cetera. Is the current definition of, or is coverage as it currently looks, is it a red flag for, like, a deal breaker or red flag for anyone to move forward with the draft as is? I think there are small changes in the update, but for the bulk of it, generally, this is what it will look like. We completely understand if you all, with your own authorities, will define a higher bar for what we call coverage and a more specific one. Completely understand. From our perspective, that is in line with the minimum elements, because we say here's the floor, and then you all can say here's what we expect actually, and that doesn't feel contradictory. Okay. We have about a half hour left. Is there anything else we should discuss on coverage? Again, you all will have one more chance to say this is terrible or not. Okay, so I would like to sort of close discussion on coverage and on this draft of the SBOM minimum elements for now. We have a half hour left, so if there's any remaining issues, I think I'll ask for those at the end of this. But I would like to sort of move on to next steps from what you all can expect to hear from us from here until publication and everything that needs to happen to make publication possible. I was sleepy and forgot to introduce our colleagues from CISA who are joining the call from our production team. I see Mary Doherty has joined. I'd like to turn it over to Mary, since her team will be who you will be hearing the most from on this document specifically. Her team leads sort of everything that goes from turning a draft all the way to publishing it on the website. And so she can best speak to the timeline moving forward, when you can expect to see another draft, what we're targeting in terms of publication. So Mary, over to you.
Hi, morning or evening, all. So as Victoria said, I'm with the production office over at CISA Cybersecurity Division. So our office is responsible for handling coordination of all joint seal process. So kind of moving forward from this, we'll be handling the coordination of this product. So you'll be seeing a lot of emails from myself and then my colleague Logan, who's also on this call. He's going to be specifically the product lead for this product. So kind of just wanted to talk through what that is going to look like. So as Victoria said, you are all going to get another chance to look at the document. She's running it through her leadership. And then we have kind of one layer on our team where we're just going to do like a quick review of it. So we should hopefully be sending out the document as like an official formal co-seal request in late February. We're hoping to send that out around February 25th, and that's just going to be the formal, please see this document. We'd like to invite you to co-seal. And we are going to request input, but I think at this point it's just going to be like minor input or like the showstopper type items that your organization like strongly disagrees with and would keep you from wanting to co-seal it. And then we will work with Victoria and Jono to adjudicate any kind of that input that we get in. And then we'll send that updated version out just so everyone's aware of it, changes that were made, how we handled your input, etc. And then we're going to do a technical edit, and that's just looking at grammar issues, punctuation issues, etc. And then we are going to prep what we call the near final version of the document. And that version is essentially like the close to publication version that we are going to be routing through our required pre-publication reviews and request that other organizations do the same. So that's essentially like any legal or leadership reviews that your organization requires to get the document looked at before publication. So for us, that's going to be we have a legal review, 2 legal reviews, I think, and then like multiple layers of leadership review and then an external affairs review. So we're all going to be sending those through at the same time. We should be sending that version out in mid to late March, and then we're looking at a late April publication. And then like through that process, you'll be sending any like changes that come in through us, and we'll work with Victoria to adjudicate. We'll like clearly communicate what's going on with the document, what we're doing with it, any changes that have been made, and like what the next steps are with the document. And then after that, we'll like clean it up and then send out the near final version and be ready for publication. And then close to publication, our CISA's external affairs office reaches out to all of their counterparts with the co-sealers to kind of coordinate any like larger messaging if there's going to be a press release, etc. So are there any questions on that?
Michael?
Yeah, sorry, I probably missed it. That exact timelines you mentioned, could you mention them
Yes.
again? Thank you.
Yes. So we're hoping to send out the like formal co-seal email around February 25th. And then we're going to give each organization 5 days to do like their last review of the document. And then we are going to clean it up, adjudicate the input, do a tech edit, so a grammar edit, and then send out that near final version in late March. And then that would be, so then each organization would have about 4 weeks to run through their required legal and leadership reviews, and we'd like to publish in late April.
And I'll just clarify one thing. I think I mentioned earlier, I'm hoping to get you guys a draft in a couple days. That is a draft that's sort of for your awareness only. You can give us feedback and say on that draft, but what we'll sort of the official review that you all will get an opportunity to comment and give feedback and tell us red flags, showstoppers. That will come from Mary's team around February 24th, just because we're going to use this time to do a pass of technical writing edits and make sure, sort of get the document into a more polished version. But we, Jono and I, want to make sure that you all, as the subject matter experts who have generously given us your time and expertise to get this draft to where it is, that you guys are able to see how we handled your feedback as soon as possible.
Yes,
Nico.
Victoria. Yes, Victoria, Mary, thanks a lot for providing the timelines. Just a couple of questions. When do you expect a commitment from agencies for co-sealing? Like, assuming that we receive the version on the 25th, when do you expect that we confirm or not whether we will be co-sealing? And secondly, what kind of changes are allowed in the last version? Because let's say we start internal approval, senior leadership approval for co-sealing on the version you send on the 25th. You know, then maybe 1 month later we get a version which is substantially different, right? I mean, I assume that will not be the case, but do you have like kind of like guidelines on what are the, or expectation on what are the changes that that you are going to accept between February 25th and the version that you circulate in late March?
So I would recommend for the February 25th version, not like routing that through your official co-seal. Because after that, we'll essentially take like we do want to co-seal, but it doesn't need to be like the official signed blessed off version. We typically need final like bless off. Yes, my organization is okay with this document. Yes, we're going to co-seal and we're committed to this document like 2 days before publication. And that's basically to give us time to then finalize the document,
Okay.
and like get any messaging in line. But before that, we do need like the commitment. Yes, we do want to co-seal, but it's like not official, if that makes sense. And so when Logan's sending out the emails, he'll specify like when he sends out the near final that we need like final approval from all co-sealers by X date so that we can publish on like this date. And then during that, any legal or leadership input that comes in, we do understand that like other organizations, your legal or leadership input is important. So we do like take all that into consideration and kind of adjudicate it as best we can to like keep organizations' seal on the document.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any more questions about this like sort of co-author, co-seal, joint seal process timeline, or when you can expect to hear from us? Any more questions on this? Opening the floor to that, and then also saying I will, in a subsequent email, provide you with Mary and or Logan's email as well, so that you all, if you want your production teams to have, if they have any questions, or your leadership teams and want to relay those directly to them regarding how the co-seal joint seal process works, I'll make that available. Yes, our colleague from KISA. Sumin. Sorry, in the chat, I saw a question regarding future plans for this forum. Did you want to come off mic? honestly, I thought you all would have more questions about the document, so I didn't budget times for the broader question of what this group will cover moving forward. But we do have an extra 20 minutes. So I'll open the floor. What should this group do moving forward? I know CISA has led the last two documents, the shared vision of SBOM and the SBOM of elements. It doesn't have to be us who leads the next one. So if you all want to propose something and lead drafting and everything else, we are very happy to turn control over to you all. We can also, I think what I would suggest, so that we're not all sort of on the spot trying to think quickly of what documents can I suggest that my leadership would probably approve, is look to schedule the next meeting sort of 6 weeks out, our normal-ish cadence. Of course, trying to plan around any holidays, time, or vacation times. And in that email, sort of ask everyone to come to the next meeting with proposals or ideas for what this group should work on next. I know after our the shared vision document, everyone was sort of in agreement that what we wanted to do next was technical specifications or technical requirements. So that was a very easy next step. I think we have sort of a whole lot more options in terms of what this group can address next. This group has been, from our perspective, really important and really helpful in, on the one hand, sharing guidance that the whole world uses and actually has cited a lot and found useful. And on the other hand, just making sure that we are all, as a group, who are tasked from our individual organizations to draft guidance and think about software supply chain. It's been helpful to have you all sort of in one place so we can bounce ideas off of you, see what you guys are working on, and benefit from being able to discuss these technical topics with experts who are thinking about the same problems. Okay, I'm also happy to wrap early.
So sorry, Victoria, I have the bad practice that I don't raise my hand. I just come off mic. I just wanted to thank you for for leading the work, and we will also be reflecting on the next steps. But yeah, thanks so much for keeping us together and also for giving us the opportunity to comment on your work.
It's been a pleasure. Okay. I'm happy to give everyone 15 minutes back in their day. I'm gonna go have breakfast and some coffee. Jana, any parting words?
No, just really appreciate seeing everyone, and thanks for all of your input on this document.
Thank you.
Yes. I think I'm gonna have a party for when we publish this document, like just for myself. Okay, thank you all. It's been lovely to see you all. We will follow up over email.
Thank
you very
you.
much. Have a nice day and evening. Bye-bye.
Yep, take care, bye.
Thanks all.
Thanks all.
Thank you much. Have a good